This is the Work Smart Hypnosis Podcast, session number 442, 5 Foundations of Passive Income.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis Podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
Hey there, it's Jason Linett with a solo episode this week designed to help you to make it rain. And let's take a moment and talk about this sort of holy grail that represents out there of passive income. In this week's episode, I'm going to break down 5 specific foundational elements that you need to have in place so that it actually works. Though even before we get into the specifics of it this week, let me just point out a bit of an obvious statement here. And this may sound a little jarring. It may be a little too blunt for some of you out there, yet it's a simple reality. There is a large majority of the population out there that will never become your one-to-one private clients. It's just a simple law of math. And granted, there's probably a variety of different reasons that this might occur, many of which are out of the ordinary in terms of what you would expect. It's not just a matter of they can or they cannot afford your core services, though that might be a part of it. It might be a matter of convenience. It might be a matter of timing. It might be that here's a person who's just kind of figured out that they do better with a bit of a self-guided journey. And rather than hold true to one specific boldly made statement such as, it only works if it's one-to-one, the strength of the hypnotic work is in the customization. Maybe. I mostly agree with that. However, here's the other thing though. How dare we deny this part of the population the opportunity to then, of course, also create that change? So it's not that one is better than the other necessarily. It's that there's different audiences that respond to different things. And I promised you 5 foundations. The thing I'm about to say before we even officially begin probably fits inside of issue number 4, which I'll tell you in advance is that it should not cannibalize sales. It's that really the opportunity to work with a digital version of you should never be positioned as something that's, quote, not as good. It should not be positioned as, hey, if this one doesn't work, you can just hire me in person. Instead, there are specific foundational elements, and that's what this week's episode is all about. So you've got a couple of options from what I'm about to share with you. You could take these 5 principles, and you could use it to maybe revisit things you've already done within your business or products or items that you've already created that are perhaps not yet selling at the frequency that you would like. Or you could actually head over to scalewithacourse.com. Just spell out those words, scalewithacourse.com. We've got an upcoming event called Scale with a Mini Course, where I'm going to be walking you through the specifics in terms of the buyer psychology. I'm going to be walking you through the technical aspects that so many people put up as a huge barrier. And if you want to take your product out to market and let it become profitable a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster, check out the details of this event. You can find it now at scalewithacourse.com. And with that, let's dive directly into these foundational principles. Here we go. This is session number 442, 5 Foundations of Passive Income. Let's dive directly into these 5 foundations with point number 1. It starts as active. So yes, passive income, the dream of waking up in the morning and seeing the magical words that, congrats, you've made a sale, that only occurs after you've put in the active effort of building the thing in the first place. So have this in mind, and by no means am I intending to label anybody as being lazy or anything of that nature. It's instead that the active effort to actually build the thing in the first place is really what's necessary to eventually have that goal of the income flowing in automatically. Think of it as the story of planting seeds like a farmer. They're putting so many seeds out there in the field, and not every single seed is going to sprout. Yet it did take that initial effort of getting the soil ready, watering the plants, watering the field, watering the crops, the irrigation, and then eventually some of those seeds begin to sprout. And if only you were actually listening to an easy explanation of this right now, which is that this Work Smart Hypnosis podcast is something that I've put out now for a little over 10 years, well over 400 episodes. And occasionally, some of these episodes have spotlighted various programs or products of mine, some of which would have been real-time things when they first rolled out, but now they're available as on-demand passive income programs. So the simple nature is, it's the willingness to set aside time right now to create something valuable in the future. That's what's necessary to even let this take shape. There's a quick story that illustrates this, and this is towards a different connotation, a different scenario, but stick with me here. It was a time that I was speaking at the HypnoThoughts Live conference, and I was talking about creating content to grow your business. And somebody in the back of the room, they raise their hand and they say, but I'm seeing a full calendar of clients every single week. If I wanted to build that kind of stuff that you're talking about, Jason, if I wanted to build that, I would have to do less of what I'm currently doing right now. And the simple answer to that is, yes, you likely would. Unless there was this willingness to carve out time in the evenings or the mornings or the weekends. But the biggest thing that's been the driver in my business over the years is that there's certain time frames throughout the week that I set aside for content creation, for building out the important systems, for building the elements that are necessary now so that passive income can flow in the future. Though, let me give you all something that would serve as an immediate win for most of you right now. You could begin to promote an upcoming event. And careful with this delineation here. It's an event that would be teaching something that you know you can deliver. That's the important filter to what I'm about to say. And it would then be that now you begin to promote this upcoming event. Again, with the filter, it's something you know you could deliver. And then you only technically need to be, if it's a weekly event, you only need to be 1 week ahead of your attendees. You see what I just did there? Yeah. So the beauty of that is it's going to break some of you out of a pattern that you've maybe been in far too long of, I'm planning, I'm building, I'm plotting, I'm creating, and never quite releasing and launching and rolling out. There's a person I have in mind right now, no, I'm not going to say the name, that for about 5 or 6 years running has been just working on that website, and as soon as it rolls out, then they're going to start seeing clients, which it's never been easier to roll out great-looking content in a matter of really minutes these days. So if you're catching yourself in that pattern of planning and plotting and strategizing without really letting it come to fruition, use this launch with an audience strategy where now, again, the filter is only be promoting something you know you can actually produce. And then, of course, record the content, and congratulations, as soon as it's done, now you have a passive income item. So point number 1, it starts as active. There's no such thing as finding the time. There is really only making the time. On to point number 2 now. It must deliver a specific deliverable outcome. Now, I'm going to spend a good amount of time on this one here because this is what's missing from most people's material. This is what's missing from their front-end content. This is what's missing from their websites. And especially with this category of creating passive income programs, this is the ultimate target, which is that you must deliver a specific deliverable outcome. Now, I might shortcut this for you here with one simple fill-in-the-blank sentence. By the time you go through this program, you will be able to, and then finish that sentence. So in many cases, we default to producing language that points at intangible outcomes. We point to things that sound good, and to us as the practitioner, to us as the expert, it sounds enticing, yet to the general public, it leaves them scratching their heads. And just remember, a confused buyer does not buy. A confused buyer isn't a buyer, they just simply retreat. So let me give you some examples of this. It must deliver a specific deliverable outcome. By the time you go through this program, you will be able to identify cravings for nicotine and stop those cravings in their tracks. I get it. By the time you go through this program, you'll be able to identify that anxiety around public speaking and create a feeling of calm in a matter of seconds. Yeah, That one sounds good, doesn't it? By the time you go through this program, you will understand exactly how to consistently publish quality content online for the next 30 days. By the time you go through this program, you will be able to blueprint, create, and launch your new passive income mini course. Hey, that's a good one. Check out scalewithacourse.com. So it must deliver a specific deliverable outcome. The beauty of this is, if you've been telling yourself the story that persuasive copywriting and marketing isn't your strength, did you hear the sort of embedded little jab and poke inside of that phrasing? If you've been telling yourself the story, well, as soon as you can fill in the gaps of this sentence, by the time you go through this program, you're going to be able to outcome. Well, as soon as you plug in that language, most of the writing now really begins to take care of itself. So simply put, if you want this thing to actually gather an audience and create desire and intrigue and curiosity, well, you need to speak in terms of these specific deliverable outcomes. By the time you go through this program, you're going to be able to identify when you've had enough to eat in the evening and those emotions that you're feeling have nothing to do with food. Do you see the difference here? We are road mapping the experience of what's about to happen, and by doing so, most of the influential writing truly begins to take care of itself. So, by the way, this point number 2, it must deliver a specific deliverable outcome. I would bet you that if you went back and looked at certain things you've done within your hypnosis business that are currently not yet performing at the level that you would like, run it through the filter of the specific deliverable outcome principle, and you're going to start to see why it was not yet working and what to do to begin to gather the traction that you need for that specific thing. Point number 3. This one's going to get a little bit esoteric here, though stick with me here, and I'm probably going to give you point number 3 and point number 4 here together, and we'll talk about them all in one. So here we go. Point number 3, it should solve the problem before the problem. Let me say that again. It should solve the problem before the problem. And point number 4, it should not cannibalize sales. So here's where it depends on your goals becomes kind of the chapter header of everything I'm about to say here. You might have the goal of producing a full system, a full step-by-step program, start here, finish there. This is something you're going to go through over the course of multiple weeks, and it's this fully designed system, start to finish, and it stands on its own. That might be your goal. Though, let me point out part of the intention on my side as to why we're doing this event called Scale with a Mini Course, which I'm now realizing, no, that's not the website. I might have to buy it to point it at it. The website is actually just scalewithacourse.com, though the event is Scale with a Mini Course. Well, it's the fact that the task of building the big, comprehensive thing that satisfies all of the steps, that is a significant undertaking for a lot of people. And I've seen it firsthand where people start off with this big, massive, significant goal, and then they don't accomplish it because there's too many pieces to it. There's too many steps. Or the playful phrase that I would often use is that it often reveals all the things that you did not yet know you would have to become an expert at. So simply put, it's a lot of stuff. And part of my intention as to why we're doing this event focusing on a mini course is that in 12 videos or less, you are going to deliver a specific deliverable outcome that grabs the audience's attention and tells them exactly what to do next. So part of that is follow through of actually doing the thing. The other part of it is that, well, you are building a muscle. You're building a specific skill set, and having had the skill of rolling out the mini course and bringing it out to your audience and beginning to create those sales, that's what exercises those muscles within the mind and the body so that then you can eventually offer out the big thing. So my intention behind this is that by rolling out a mini course, it's that point number 3, it's going to solve the problem before the problem. That also then, point number 4, it does not end up cannibalizing sales. So let me actually walk you through 2 specific examples of this, and I'm going to say these next 2 examples without any bit of bragging behind it, without any bit of boasting. Though, if you've seen the images of my home office, though I am in the process of moving as this episode releases, so the background behind me may eventually look a little bit different, but you get the idea here. The two things I'm going to talk about are the sort of foundations of two of those big awards that I have on my wall, what they call a 2 Comma Club award that the ClickFunnels company puts out. And it's where if you can prove you've driven $1 million of sales through one specific website funnel sequence, then you qualify to get one of those awards. I have 3 of them, and this is the story of 2 of them. So one of them, though, isn't exactly a mini course, though you'll see how it kind of follows the same principles. It's the fact that at one point, and we still have this, it just needs to be updated as I've since moved away from Virginia, I was doing an online webinar. The webinar was free, and the nature of it was that it would fully explain, here's what hypnosis is, here's how it works, here's why it works, here's the reasons why you would be successful with hypnosis, as well as here's the reasons why you might not yet be successful with hypnosis. And at the end of that, I presented the pricing of my programs, then with the language of, however, you're not going to pay that, at least not today. Instead, there's a button below to pay for a consult, which is where we're going to roadmap exactly what needs to happen for this change to occur. And then if you would like my help, that payment either applies towards the full program, or in the rare chance this isn't for you, it takes me 3 clicks of a mouse to then refund your money. By the way, that specific language performed so much better than I'll refund you. Just the specificity of language. If it's not for you, it takes me 3 clicks of a mouse to refund your money. And I'm now saying that looking down at the touchpad on my computer, which is not a mouse, but let's set that aside for now. So what was I doing there? I was solving the problem before the problem, which was that you did not yet have the right roadmap to solve that issue. So in the nature of this paid consultation, together we were having a conversation, and that's where I would lay out the exact roadmap, which then the sales process naturally wrote itself, which was then the upgrade of the sale. The journey into the core offer of working with me one-to-one was that of, if you want help with that, you already know the pricing, are you in? So here we go again with it solved the problem before the problem. Yes, you needed the solution, but also you needed the roadmap. And that's the front end of what was the Virginia Hypnosis Company. And that's one of those things that from that $200 sale into that paid consult, where we would then produce the roadmap, I would then go, do you want help with that? I would then sell people into my one-to-one services. And that's what, at the time I submitted for that award, had produced about $1.3 million in one-to-one client income. Hey, this stuff works. The other one, though, is oddly enough a little bit meta in the description, because it's the one where then I basically taught that process to the hypnosis industry. It's where over at what's now velvetropehypnosis.com, I talked about the problem before the problem. It wasn't just that you didn't have enough clients coming into your business. It's the fact that you didn't have the right people reaching out to you. So velvetropehypnosis.com was then selling a low-cost thing on the front end, a mini course, which was then teaching my Velvet Rope strategy for getting consults. And then from there, I could deliver this intentional upgrade language, this intentional upselling language. And listen carefully to this, because you don't want to create the scenario where it's ever that, oh, well, because the low price thing didn't work, I guess you need the big thing. And you may laugh at that, though I've seen a lot of people using similar language to that. No. It's instead where I could say, you now have everything you need to create one of these consult application processes. You've got the questions to ask. You understand the technology of what to do. You've seen how to onboard your potential clients even before they become your potential clients. So I've now I've restated all the value that they've already achieved. However, what about getting people to actually find your Velvet Rope strategy? What about the conversation you have with that person once they're on the phone with you? What about the nature of how you design your packages and your programs? And for that, let me give you a preview of what's inside of Hypnotic Business Systems inside of hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. So to reiterate points number 3 and 4, it should solve the problem before the problem. And 4, it should not cannibalize sales of your core offers. In the first example I gave you with my one-to-one clients, the core offer was the one-to-one services, the package I would eventually present to them. In the example with Hypnotic Business Systems and Velvet Rope, this problem before the problem was that they needed to have better quality phone consults. However, that left a gap open, the same as you've now got the roadmap. Now, do you want to do that on your own, or do you want my help? And by the way, take note, when you start to realize the natural embedded journey of sales is always satisfying the same targets, we always represent the same 2 points in the mind of our audiences, whether we're selling a training, whether we're providing services, whether we're doing a class, an event, whatever it might be. We always represent faster and easier. That's really what, in most cases, we are selling. So combining these 2 points, it should solve the problem before the problem. And 4, it should not cannibalize sales. Now, let's imagine there's an asterisk after that one here, because it might be your intention to create the big, comprehensive, multi-$1,000 online program that's completely hands-off, and people buy it, and then they say nice things about you on the internet. That might be your goal. However, have you successfully rolled out mini courses? Because it's the classic Mark Twain line about, please forgive the length of this letter. I did not have the time to write you a short one. To pull off these principles, to get the right psychological triggers in place with a mini course is going to set you up for building out the bigger thing, which, as a little aside here, Velvet Rope strategy was never intended to be its own standalone thing originally. Instead, that was one part of a bigger system, yet I could look at it and go, wait a minute, this one element solves the problem before the problem. And I can see that it stands alone. Let me now use marketing terms and splinter this one part off, because now it stands on its own. Which all of these points now set us up for point number 5. It must have intention. And this is something that I've been saying now for several years. If you're not yet clear as to what the outcome is going to be when someone goes through your mini course, and if you're not yet clear why they ought to then elevate into your core offers and programs, if you're not yet clear on that, your audience is not going to be clear on that either. So this is a big part of how, with this upcoming event, I'm going to be there. My team is going to be there with me in terms of providing support, because sometimes it is just those tiniest of tweaks, just that little bit of a shift in language so that, 1, you're going to have people buying with the right expectations. 2, the most important part, in my opinion, you're going to have them ravenous to then dive in and actually put the content into use. And then 3, they're going to see the value of moving forward with you. And 4, when that eventual upgrade opportunity to then take the next step and make the next purchase appears, it's not going to feel like, oh, crap, now they're just trying to sell me something else. It's also not going to fit into the category of, well, this one didn't work, I guess I'll buy more, which is not how the brain works, it turns out. So in terms of that intention, this is where a little bit of advanced preparation, a little bit of clarity and plotting in advance lets this become a much more organic experience, a much more natural occurrence. So my big message to all of you is that, once again, there is an audience out there that you're not yet serving. And there's a variety of reasons why that might be happening. And let's also throw in the other part of this, which is that what would be different, and I'm going to put a hypothetical on this one here. What if you could, well, I'll just phrase it without a specific bold number. What would be different if you could be as close as you could to a 100% closing sales rate? Now, I'm not going to ever claim that's possible. However, think of it this way. Someone has gotten onto a call with you for your services, and then for whatever reason, they're not able to dive into your core programs. And then from there, you're able to make what marketing we would call a downsell. You're able to make that downsell offer, such as, hey, well, do you mind if I share another option? Well, here's this other program of mine. Here's what it is. Here's what it does. And here's what that means for you. And here's how it delivers a different journey to move towards that same outcome. However, it just has a different pathway to get there because it's entirely self-guided and digital as opposed to one-to-one. And because it doesn't require me to be there in real time, you can see this is an easier entry point in terms of price. And now all of a sudden, rather than leave that call with either paid money at a respectable amount or just a zero, instead now there's an opportunity where now that person still exists in your business's ecosystem, but the difference is now they're a buyer and they're not just a free opt-in. Remember this phrase, a buyer is a buyer is a buyer. And one of the biggest discoveries that's changed my business over the years is that the journey from $0 to $1,000 is massive. Though shockingly, the journey from $27 to $1,000 is a whole lot shorter. And that's why we're putting together this upcoming event. You can find the details over at scalewithacourse.com. So really, hey, let's do this right. You've got two options here. Option number one is you can take everything I've shared with you and apply it on your own, guess and test these principles, and eventually you'd find that hit in terms of a passive income stream. Or for a reasonable low investment, you can head over to scalewithacourse.com. And that's where me and my team will help you to do that faster and easier, simplifying the technology, working with you on the sales video, the sales page, the delivery of the membership content, as well as making sure the intention is perfectly dialed in. If you want to get there faster and easier, check out scalewithacourse.com. Hey there, it's Jason Linett. And one more time, thank you so much for engaging with this program, for including it in your ongoing conversations in this wonderful hypnotic industry. And you can head over to the show notes of this episode over at worksmarthypnosis.com/442. And while you're there, head over to scalewithacourse.com. This is where we're going to walk you through the exact step-by-step process to blueprint, to build, and launch your profitable mini course, profitable passive income stream. So check that out, scalewithacourse.com.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.